Guys, you're very welcome. The first question a lot of people here have in the audience, some of them come from family businesses, they maybe come from a family farm. A lot of them also maybe want to do consulting or work for family businesses. Rosie, I'm going to look to you first. One thing I found very interesting, before you've just come back into the family business, you spent 5 years working in the UK. You work for Christie's and then you work in a food startup. Can you give any guidance or advice for working outside the family business rather than just getting straight involved into the family business?
Yeah, I mean, every case is going to be different. For myself, I had, by osmosis, always, grown up within a family business and had sort of plans at some point in the future to come back. But for me, I wanted to go away and try a couple of different things first. And I think the 5 years in London has really given me a bit of time to develop in different ways, both in terms of business and personal. So for me, it was a great time on the first front in being able to develop some basic commercial understanding. And in that front, in the methodology of whatever discipline you might be working in, whether that would be sales or marketing or operations, so that you get a sense of how other businesses run and that you can take that skill set back. And the second point on that, working in another business like Christie's, for example, for me, it gave me a chance to see some of the things that they did so well. Yes, that was a big global art auction house, nothing to do with woolen fabric in Donegal, but how they went direct to the consumer and their customer care was superb, because they were dealing with some of the wealthiest people in the world and how to really look after people. And that transfers across so many different businesses. And in the second sense, away from the more kind of theocratic commercial end of how to do business, it gives you a chance to actually develop your own values. I worked in a food startup when I kind of wanted a break from the corporate area, and that food startup gave me a sense of what was important to me. Yes, making profit, making a successful business, but this food startup was big on the sustainability, big on their environmental values, and that's something that I've taken back to McGee. And then the third, and just to finish on this, if we've done commercial, if we've done values, and the third thing for me is learning how you work best. You guys know about deadlines, exam pressures, and when you're at work is how you balance all of the different type of pressures and when finance comes into it, and figure out how the really basic stuff, how you plan your week, and also being managed by other people first that aren't your family, so you can see what a good manager is and a bad manager is, and then in time you can develop your own management way of working. And that's key to bring all of that three elements back into the family business and add value.
Was that planned, Rosie? So what I mean by that is when you finished your qualification, did you sit down as a family and make a plan to say, Mom and Dad, I'm taking 5 years out, or I'm going to take some time and do my own thing and experience the world and potentially then come back into the family business? Or was it, listen, I want to go and see the world and I'm gone?
I'd love to say that we sat down when I was 18 and made a really clear 10-year plan. We definitely didn't. Both my siblings work in the business, and for me, it was something, as I said at the beginning, that was vaguely in the future, but it wasn't definite. And I think there was no pressure from my own family to join, but within the last 2 years, I suppose sometimes you go away and you experience working for other people, and then it takes that to realise what you have at home and what you have in Ireland is incredible and an opportunity not to be missed. But I didn't view it like that when I was 18 or 19. So it was definitely a more recent thing. And it was also a sort of an aligning of the stars in the sense of it wasn't just me walking in saying, right, here I am, I'm manager, let's hit the road. There were various opportunities that came up within a sort of basic sort of sales remit, which is where I've been working for the last couple of years. But I do think, yes, you can plan and plan and plan, but there are some circumstances that come into it as well.
Okay, great. Orla, I look to you next. You have if you want to say, a traditional Irish family business in the sense of a family farm, and very similar to Ross's business. Your father in May 2018 has diversified into gin. So you've finished in the business school here 2 years ago. Can you tell us your attitude to working both inside and outside the family business, and your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I suppose I can relate to Rosie quite a lot. I moved into the family business in May 2018 after working for a food services company, and I suppose I moved into it because we were launching a new product, and I had the ability to be able to help push the product, build brand awareness, and really just get it out into the market. But myself and my dad would have had the conversation prior to that this was going to be a temporary thing, because I knew the importance of getting out there and working for other businesses, and gaining other experiences, and as Rosie said, working and seeing how other businesses are run as well, and working underneath other managers, and learning what you're really good at and what you're not so good at, because I think that's so important, and really understanding what you can bring to the business and what you want to bring to the business, like Rosie said, what impact you want to make. So I think that is hugely important for me now, is to get out and to work for more companies, work under other managers who are going to be able to give you criticism as well, and that you can really, really learn from.
Okay. I'm going to move on to a topic now which I think emanates with a lot of the students here, because they're studying marketing. All of your three brands, if you look at your respective websites, very strong marketeers, marketing presence, and social media in particular. Ross, I look to you first. Just from even your slides earlier on, like you mentioned Hong Kong, China, many different parts of the world, even with Emirates, and your presence literally across probably many countries of the world. What advice do you have, as people are sitting here today as next generation entrepreneurs, how to develop a brand and how to take that brand international?
That's a hard one. When we're going into an international country, so we sort of look at the country. So I'm gonna rob a line from a big bank here, HSBC. So think global, act local. So say if we're going into Austria, we'll go in there with our brand, but we'll get down on the ground. We'll find out what are the done things in that country. You can't just push a product on another country and expect them to just take it just like they do in Ireland. An example of this would be in Germany. So our German market is built to quite a large scale at this stage. When we were going in there first, we put people on the ground and all, and from our tastings, as I said, we go in and we taste and you sample. They called our crisp the Irish crisp, so the Irish crisp, right? So we changed on our German bag from Kyo's Grown with Love in Ireland to Kyo's the Irish crisp on the packaging. So it was on the shelf then. So that was what was being called in them retailers by the consumers. So we changed it so it led forward with them. That's an example straight away there. As I said, yeah, so going into the markets, you need to know where you're going, what the consumers want, different flavours. So if we were going into Spain, tomato flavour is a massive one in Spain. So we don't actually have that in our portfolio at the moment. Other countries, like over in Dubai, our sweet chilli flavour goes really well. So we'd put that in instead of one of our core. So our core ones would be cheese and onion, salt and vinegar, and it was roast beef, or it's our steak flavour. In Ireland, chili is up there in our range, but it's not. In Dubai, it's a lot higher. So I was in Dubai last year, the Taste of Dubai was on, and we had a stand at that, and we had all the flavours there. There was some of them we had to leave at home. People were interested in our shamrock and sour cream one. They'd never tasted something like that, but the chili one was just flying off the shelf. That's down to their tastes. So you have to, when you're moving into a different international market, you need to know the people that you're focusing in them markets. They could be completely different to what you're doing. Say for instance with Rosie, I'm wearing our McGee suit today. I hope I'm doing it justice. So there is a link there. There's also another link. I buy potatoes off Orla's dad, John, from time to time, especially from new season. So it's really much a family affair up here, guys. But if you're moving into, say, the west coast or the east coast of the States, there's your demographic there to move into. There's all the expats, the Irish there, and the brand could really probably work there, but where it probably wouldn't work on the west coast, stuff like that. Yeah, and another one where we went into, say, Australia. So we were down in Australia for a certain amount of time, and we were focusing on the expats. We weren't just going for the locals. It was pretty much the expats we built it up with, and we built it up with them, and then we got sales with the locals from that. I hope it gives you a bit of an insight into how we go into a foreign market.
Yeah, so just to add to that, we get it on a I get the question a lot. A lot of the next generation sitting in the audience here maybe work in agri-food. And with the whole Brexit scenario and how the UK is going to be affected, it's going to be affected really harshly, I think, for many Irish family businesses. So a lot of the people sitting here are looking at different markets. How important is it to have people on the ground in those markets? So you can talk about, you know, the Asian markets and the Middle East. What have you done with regard to people on the ground?
So what we do is we will go to them countries, and this is actually vital because you can actually link yourself up with a business that doesn't replicate your cores and your values, and they're not going to represent you correct on the ground in that country. So we're not at the size yet to be able to put a team that we directly that are direct employees of ours in a country. So what we do is we'll pitch in that country for a company to work with, an agency, and they have to replicate what you want. You'll train them up in your core, your values, about the brand. You'll train them in the product, what's good about it, what's not good about it, non-GMO, it's all gluten-free, the whole lot. And they will represent your brand. Because if you don't do that, if I got a listing in Russia, which we actually have, or done a different country that we're not in, I have to try and think of a country we're not in. So South Africa, right? And I just got a listing with a retailer there and put them on the shelf and did nothing. You only get a certain amount of time on a shelf. And if you're not getting sales for the retailer, you'll just be put to one side, and you have one chance at it and one chance alone. So when you're going into a market, you have to have done your homework. You need to put the right people in place. Please God, in years to come, I will have a team of people that we employ directly in the States or in Dubai or in them countries. That'd be great. But until then, yeah, you have to do your homework. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So do your homework and make sure that the people that you're linking up with in the foreign countries are the correct ones, because that can be a do or die moment.
Rosie, you've 4 stores now. Just recently, Kildare Village has been your latest venture, and the 1866.com website is really thriving. How much has the brand changed since you've got involved in the business?
Yeah, I think to give you guys a bit of context, don't worry, not 150 years of history, but I mean, just looking back, kind of the sort of previous 5 generations, you know, and you guys, you may never have heard of us, or if you have, there might still be that perception that we're kind of, you know, your grandfather alive or dead and his jacket in the cupboard. And we've managing to finally break through that. And I think originally, you know, in the last sort of 20 or 30 years, where we were really seen as a manufacturer and we were product, and it was very much business to business. We have a big wholesale business where we're still supplying over 400 independent retailers, and that's fantastic. But that's rows of suits and jackets. And in the last 5 to 10 years, we've developed far more into a brand. And that shift from product to brand, which is still ongoing, is absolutely vital. And the kind of voice piece for that is actually having our own retail, where we have our own control over how we look and our own collections, which kind of go much more into the casual end as well, because that is kind of where the world is going. And e-commerce as well, giving us a platform to tell our story. And brand, as I'm sure you guys all know, it is key, and it's giving the end consumer something to resonate. So for us, that's family, that's that we're Irish, and it's our heritage and design. And we use those 4 pillars and try and feed all of our creative content through that. And this is very much a work in progress, and this doesn't happen overnight, and it's something that we had to really stand back and make that conscious decision to just go from being a supplier to business to really think about that end consumer. And that's a really exciting journey for us. And I think that will bring us, hopefully, much sort of success into the future as being a brand becomes so important.
So you've had 150 years of history before you. And how much opportunity have you been given as the next generation into the family business? And the reason I say that, a lot of people feel pressure because they have maybe their parents who somewhat maybe have the ownership and control of the business. And you're next generation with lots of great ideas, but sometimes the ideas are turned away or put a blinkered on. So how much opportunity have you been given since coming in?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, like my dad, he joined in the 70s, and that really was I suppose, a reflection on Irish business at that time. He was at a kind of double disadvantage. He was young and he was a family member. He was a family member, so he was viewed with some sort of suspicion, and he was young, so he was definitely kind of, kept under the table, and very little absolute responsibility given to him. And thankfully, into this generation, that's really shifted. And I suppose from Dad's experience, which wasn't perhaps the most positive he could have had in his 20s, it's now been a really positive experience for myself and my siblings. We've been given rope as such, hopefully not to hang ourselves, but given responsibility, and where we are made accountable for our decisions. It's not just coming into a board meeting every quarter and saying, I want to do this, 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 can I have, sort of finance behind this. It's really putting together those plans, having those ideas and following them through. And if you fail, it's your fault, not somebody else's fault. So I think that responsibility comes with risk, but it comes with a much greater sense of purpose and involvement in the family business.
If we look at any of the bars, the busy bars in Dublin, and you walk in, one of the most striking things in the last 5 years is the arrival of gin. There are so many different brands, types of gin, whether it's national or international gin brands. Or I look to you, how has your family business started in May 2018? How has the brand differentiated itself from so many big gin companies across the world? And how is branding for your small family business in County Wexford, how has that evolved?
It was difficult, I'm not going to lie, it was definitely difficult. The gin market is extremely competitive now. We would have come up with the idea about 3 years ago, but as Ross said, it takes time for these ideas to come into fruition. And yeah, I suppose our USP is that it is a potato gin and that we're making it from our own potatoes, and we have a real story behind it. It is a family business, it's a family farm. My dad has been growing potatoes for years and growing high quality potatoes too, so that's what we're using in our gin. It has quite a different distinctive taste in that it's a lot creamier than a grain-based gin, and yeah, so that's kind of how we're differentiating it. We also put a lot of time into the branding of it. We worked with a fantastic branding company to get a good brand because we needed to look well on shelf. We put a huge amount of money into the bottle itself. It's engraved and it's a very special bottle. The cork is very special, so we put a lot of time into the different elements. And then it's the actual gin itself. We held a huge amount of tasting sessions because, again, the quality is so important. And we can see that now that we got that right from the award that we won. And it's also great to see when people do taste it against other gins and you see people's reaction. It makes you feel proud of the product and you can really get behind it. People love the taste of it. So I really think we have differentiated in that way.
Okay, great. One of the interesting things when we talk about family business, and families can have this positive but equally a negative. And the reason I say they can sometimes be a negative, you're working with family. You're working with your dad, your brother, your sister, your aunt or your uncle. Ross, how have you found the family dynamic? You showed here you're working with your cousin, you're working with your brother, and you're working with your dad and your uncle on a daily basis. How can you maybe talk us through a little bit of the family dynamic?
Plead the fifth on that one.
What's that?
Plead the fifth on that one.
Okay.
Oh, that's a dangerous question. There's a lot of passion involved. So I suppose I haven't worked in a business outside of the family business. I was in Australia back in 2006, was it? And I worked in a business there for 3 months, and I got a bit of an insight into formal procedures, I suppose. In the family business, you need your own areas. You need to own something. So you can't have two people on top of each other. You can in a normal business, but so I do a lot of accounts with Dad as well. We have our moments, but my role within the business would always been very operations driven, so I wouldn't spend a lot of my time there, and then you're dabbling in all the other areas. So it's variety as well, but so say for instance, my uncle and my cousin, they look after all the growing of the crop. So that's their forte and their end of things. running the business, and sales and marketing and all that will be Thomas, myself and Dad. Dad at the top. It has its moments. You have your arguments, and if you had similar arguments in a normal business with people who are just employed, you'd have lawsuits probably and stuff. They get quite heated at times, but that's the passion that's there, and that's people wanting. At the end of the day, we have the same goal. We want to put the best product out there. We want to push forward with the business. We want to buy the correct machinery. We want to brand it up correctly. Yeah, everybody has their own. 9 times out of 10, our opinions are all the same, and we go in the right direction. But when you have that 1 time out of 10 where you're like going, I think it should be going this way. And as we've got older and we've worked together longer, that's a lot easier to put your opinion out there and leave it on the table, and we'll discuss it and come to a final agreement that everybody's happy with. But that takes a lot of time and years, especially if you imagine us coming into the business out of school. My father, I'll hark back to during the presentation there, and I said forgiveness rather than permission. There would have been several times he would have went with ideas for something, and he would have said, just go back to what you're doing, concentrate on what you're doing now, and don't be worrying about that other stuff. And the other stuff we were talking about there is the future, a new idea for a new product. And so the kitchen table would have been the worst place nearly to bring a product, because that was the most critical place ever. So you put a product across there and it gets slated nearly, but rightly so, because we never wanted to put a product out there that wasn't premium and top notch. The crisps came across and they got a hands of approval, so we knew we were onto a winner if they made it across the kitchen table. It has its moments when you're working with family. You have to make it work for the benefit of the business, and as I said, for all your staff and all working there as well. But there's no better place to work either. I could never see myself working anywhere else. It's highly rewarding, and you see your family all the time. I take for granted now being able to see my mother every day if we go in there for lunch, or my father. So that's a bit of a negative on it as well in years to come. You spend so much time with them, and you know them inside out. Rows, as I said, they come with the business, but you get over them, and as I said, we are working to the same end goal, and it's really driven by passion, and that'll follow through, and we get on with it and we push forward. And I'd like to think that the business at the moment, Dad and Tony have handed the potato business over to us 3 now, so that was a bit of a what would you say?
Landmark.
A landmark decision, yeah, and I suppose it's them showing that they think that we're ready to bring that one forward too as well. They've seen what we've done with the crisp business, so we're at the steering wheel with that, or at the rudder, I suppose to say. So we're all in one ship now, and we have to make sure that we're steering it in the same direction, and we're happy with the direction that we're going.
I want to ask last question. I just want to ask the 3 of you, Ross. The slide you had there, and I've sampled this product. Just this year, 2019, you've launched the popcorn. How important is it to continually innovate? We use this word, and it's the most overused word in business schools, is innovation. But each of your 3 companies have innovated with the gin, the new stores, the new product, even with the website, and Ross, for example, latest with the crisps and now the popcorn. But how important is it to continually innovate for each of your businesses? Ross, I'll start with you.
Oh, it's vital. You can't not innovate. So we'll say if you're not innovating, you're standing still. If you're standing still, someone else is passing you out. So you cannot sit on your laurels and think what you have is great and that's going to be the be all and end all. Kodak Camera's done that. Yeah, Inchem Digital, and they just sat where they are, and they just went down. They just went down from there. You have to innovate. If you do not innovate, as I said, you're actually going backwards. You're not standing still. You're going backwards. We have our name out there as being an innovative potato brand, innovative crisp brand now as well, snack brand. People just, I think, my own view of it is they expect it of us, I think, and there's a bit of pressure on there. But I suppose it's within the business. You have people in there that are their mindset. Like I have a press in my office, and I'd say there's about 15 or 20 products in there that are at various stages of progression, shelf products, and just getting the time to bring them through. We have a dedicated MPD process in place now. Before this, so say when we come out with the Easy Cooks and that was us doing it ourselves, and we were just starting with the brand. So if something failed, it was okay. You just took it back out again. Now we've built up a brand there that people. So if I come out with a new product, customers are going to taste it anyway. They're going to go and sample and go, oh, that's one of Kyo's products. That's got to be nice. They wouldn't launch anything that's not nice. And they will taste it. So that's on our shoulders all the time. And yes, you have to innovate. As I said, if you don't innovate, you're not standing still. You're actually going backwards. And it's only a matter of time for one of your competitors is going to do what you were going to do. And you're on the back foot then.
Okay. Rosie, you're in a fashion industry where change and new markets, so for example, 4 different seasons of the year in regard to gents and ladies fashion. How important is it innovation and keeping aligned with trends for your business?
Oh, replicating what Ross was saying, like, it is absolutely crucial. And you know what Eric was saying, this word innovate is kind of bandied around the place. Innovation is absolutely key. It's also really uncomfortable because it's so easy to just stand and kind of deal with what you have. But if you do that, then you lose, and you lose out, and you do go into that kind of downward spiral. I mean, for us, just to kind of give you a really tangible example, all of these independent retailers that we have, you know, years ago, as I said, we were suits and jackets. We bring in, this year we've brought out a duffel coat with a fur collar, and bringing that into a retailer, and they look at you like you have 5 heads. What are you doing with that? You guys specialize in jackets. Why are you branching out into something casual and that's much, much too urban for you as a brand? What are you doing? And we have to just push past that, because we believe that you have to drive forward and actually make change and develop your own, from our perspective, as you guys are developing new products, we have to develop new elements to our collection. And that's where I do see innovation is absolutely crucial. But it is also a balancing act. If it's uncomfortable in one point, it's a balancing act in never losing sight of what your origins are. And for you guys, it's, you know, something that, you know, will always relate to the Kyo's brand identity, presumably. And for us, it's also making sure that we don't lose a sense of who we are, but that we also go forward with new direction, new emphasis on contemporary design, but don't forget where we've come from. And that is a juggle, and then you've got to just make sure that you're changing mindsets around that. So it makes it very exciting, it's challenging, but it does make it worthwhile.
Or the last word to you, innovation in your family business.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, you have to be innovative and you have to have innovation on the brain, or else you will be left behind. I know for us, even, we only launched a new product, but we still had to look at what other products could we make from that. For Christmas, for example, we launched a Christmas cracker which had 2 miniature bottles, 2 50ml bottles in it. And people loved that because it was a quick Chris Crindle present, which was coming out in at about €15, so it was affordable for them. They were getting to taste a premium gin without having to spend the €45 on a larger bottle, you know. So people appreciate the fact that you've gone and you've looked at other ways of selling your product. But I also think, especially more for probably the potato end of it, it's process innovation as well. You need to look at not just product innovation, but process innovation in terms of the packaging and how can you package more efficiently and faster and get more product out there, you know. So I think there's other ways of looking at innovation as well.
Okay, excellent. The one thing you notice about the 3 speakers and the 3 family businesses, over 400 years of existence as family firms. Some of the topics we've spoken about were working outside the business, brand and the development of the brand international, working with family and family dynamics, opportunities and entrepreneurship in the family firms, and the last one there we looked at was innovation. I'd like to thank Ross Kyo, Rosie Temple and Orla Stafford for a fascinating conversation on entrepreneurship and family firms. Thank you very much.